Spine-chilling winter tales. 60 minutes of sinister horror revealed for your haunted night alone. Mia's fingers trembled as she served the steaming plates, the scent of frying burgers mingling with the sugary air of freshly baked pies at the diner. A blanket of snow smothered the late-night town outside, the thick silencing veil pressed against the windows. People came and went, laughing animatedly in the warm light, but she felt a cold dread burrowing down deep in her gut. Every thud from the basement, every whisper shade of wind had her pulse racing. Ben was home alone. Meanwhile, snowflakes swirled like tiny lost souls outside, stark against the streetlights, flickering ominously. Each night at the diner was a battle between light and dark, the cozy warmth battling the icy fear creeping into her heart. She thought she knew her neighbors, but one rogue figure always stood out. Lurking in the shadows, a man with a dark past. Mr. Hawkins. Dread pooled at the base of her spine. Just before midnight, her phone buzzed on the counter. A message from an unknown number. "I see you, Mia." Her heart lurched. How could anyone see her? She was safe in her community, wasn't she? As she read more messages, panic mounted. Intrusive details about her life seeped through the text like poison: who she was, where she worked, the name of her son. Someone was watching, lurking. "Can I get a refill?" a grinning customer asked. With a tight smile, she obliged, fighting down the tightening knot of anxiety. But as she looked into the face of her customer, all she could think about was Ben alone, wrapped in their dimly lit home, surrounded by the eerie whispers of that dreaded basement. The call came through. It was Ben. "Mom, it's me. I think I heard something." His voice trembled, cutting through the already burdened silence, terror clinging to every word. "Something's in the basement. When your mom comes home, everything will be okay," the dispatcher dismissed with a sigh. "You're just overreacting, kid." Just like that, the last shred of her comfort unraveled. Leaving the diner behind, Mia's heart pounded harder than a jackhammer, urgency pushing her through the snow-draped streets. The wind howled, making ghostly sounds in the empty air. It almost sounded like whispers. The deeper she went, shadows lengthened around her, blocking out the flickering streetlights. Caught between a gut instinct screaming danger and the shadows of their neighborhood that had once felt so safe, Mia couldn't shake the paranoia prickling her skin. Ben was locked inside that house. Further down the road, she glimpsed Mr. Hawkins in his yard, standing still as a predatory statue, watching her with eyes that chilled her blood. Did he know? Was he waiting for something? Panic washed over her, cold and piercing. "Ben, I'm almost home," she called out, and the wind swallowed her voice like a wisp of smoke. As she dashed forward, she felt a sudden dread hanging thick in the air. Home finally in sight, she could barely catch her breath, pushing open the door as it creaked ominously. Darkness engulfed her, the lights flickering like the last dying breath of hope. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. A slow scraping sound echoed from the basement, sending chills racing down her spine. "Ben," she called again, fear twisting her stomach. As she stepped into the hallway, she could feel the oppressive weight of the darkness creeping closer. Each whisper of wind through the cracks in the old house amplified every shadow, every breath. When she reached Ben's room, she was met with a deep silence, and with trembling hands, she turned the doorknob. The air inside felt off, charged with anxiety and confusion. "Ben?" Before she could react, darkness enveloped her as the last flicker of light died, leaving her trapped in a void of uncertainty. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the cold space, a whisper laden with menace: "You should have stayed away." Mia, she felt the air thicken, and horror crashed over her like the heavy snowfall outside. What awaited her in the suffocating darkness? Would she find Ben? Or had the fears she dismissed turned into a reality far worse than her imagination could conjure? Mia's heartbeat thundered in her ears, drowning out every other sound. The suffocating darkness pressed against her, wrapping her in a shroud of dread. "Ben," she cried out, her voice wavering. Yet no answer came, only the sinister echo of her own fear. Taking a desperate step back, she felt around the walls, her fingers grazing against the cold, rough surface. She had always kept a flashlight in the drawer by the bed. If she could just find it, maybe she could pull some light from the abyss. As she stumbled across the floor, her pulse quickened with every creak beneath her feet. "Ben, I'm here. Where are you?" Panic twisted her words, making them sound foreign, even to her. Then, a thud came from the basement, a heavy thud that felt like a warning. A chill crawled up her spine, and for a moment, she hesitated. Should she escape? Should she run back out into the snow? But the thought of leaving Ben alone gripped her heart with icy fingers. She had to find him. She had to know. Mia edged toward the basement door, her breath shallow as she gripped the doorknob. The wood felt damp, a far cry from the warm home she once cherished. The whispers grew louder, pressing against her, urging her away. But what if Ben was down there? With a swift turn of the knob, the door swung open, revealing a staircase swallowed in darkness. Anxiety coiled in her stomach like a serpent. She switched on her phone's flashlight, but the weak beam flickered and danced, barely penetrating the heavy shadows. Each step down the creaking stairs felt like descending into the depths of hell. Shadows loomed and shifted as the air grew electric, thickening with something dark and malevolent. "Ben?" she whispered again, her voice shaky and small. Something moved below, a scuttling noise, quick and unnatural. Mia's breath hitched, and she involuntarily took a step back, nearly losing her footing. "Ben, answer me." Silence engulfed her once more, and she took a breath to steady herself against the rising tide of terror. Just then, the flashlight flickered once more before dying entirely, plunging her into absolute darkness. Mia pushed back against the wall, feeling her heart race, drowning in overwhelming fear. She could hear it now, soft, rhythmic breathing. No, not just breathing, whispering words that merged with the dark, swirling around her like a consuming fog. A sudden realization hit her hard. "It's not just the basement," she murmured to herself. The house felt alive, suffused with an angry energy, an echo of long-buried secrets clawing to the surface, like a beast ready to pounce. In the suffocating quietness, a cold breath wafted against her neck, sending her heart racing. She whipped around, the sudden movement almost causing her to scream. "Who's there?" she cried, voice trembling as she fumbled for the wall, desperately seeking an exit. As if in response, a shadow lunged from the darkness, brightening momentarily with the harsh glint of something metallic before plunging back into the abyss. A knife? Was it? "Ben!" Mia's scream pierced the stillness. The blade glimmered, spinning slowly into the dark like a pendulum threatening to crush her very essence. With newfound determination fueled by horror, she stumbled backward, her foot landing on something warm and slick, the cold reality that shot her blood to ice. She crouched, horrified, and felt it with trembling fingers. It was a small hand, unyielding and lifeless. "No, no, Ben." Mia surged forward, gripping the steps, yearning for the sunlight that felt impossibly far away. Terror clenched her lungs, but she wouldn't be consumed. "Ben." With each step, the whispers grew louder, drowning her pleas. Urgency clawed at her as the shadows pressed forward, suffocating her will to fight. She was so close, but was it too late? As she reached the top of the stairs, she spun around, desperate to find her son in the blinding darkness. Then, from the gloom of the basement, a chilling giggle erupted, the voice sweet yet sinister. "Mommy!" Mia's breath caught, realization dawning as dread washed over her once more. "Ben? But was it really him? Or was it the house calling her to join it in its suffocating embrace?" As she took a hesitant step back, an even deeper darkness began to form behind her, a shape growing ever more distinct, weaving through the shadows. What emerged from the basement next would seal her fate. Mia's heart raced as she strained to make sense of the sinister laughter. Then, the word clawed at her throat, desperate and raw. The air felt dense and oppressive, wrapping around her like an unseen vice. The figure in the shadows twisted, its form unclear, inky blackness blending with the very fabric of the house. "Mommy," the voice called again, a chill radiating from it that seeped into her bones. There was something wrong, something grotesquely familiar about that sound. It warped her instincts, making her blood run cold. Clenching her fists, she edged backward, away from the growing shape. Each step resonated in the silence, punctuated by the storm raging outside, wind howling like a banshee. How could she face the specter of her own child? Her instincts screamed at her to flee, to abandon everything, yet all she could think about was Ben, her beautiful boy. "Don't be scared, Mommy." The giggle rose higher, echoes bouncing off the walls as if the house itself were mocking her. "Stop," she pleaded, every fiber in her being demanding she turn and run. "Where is Ben?" Mia's voice trembled, but she stood her ground, trying to summon courage from somewhere deep inside. The shape shifted again, now taking on a form she recognized beneath the dark veil. It was too tall, too exaggerated. The fingers elongated and twisted. The smile too wide, too much like a rictus grin that felt more like a threat than a comfort. "I'm here." Mia felt sick. The laughter constricted around her, tightening like a serpent squeezing its prey. Was it truly Ben, or a malevolent force using her son's likeness to pull her in? "Get away," she shouted, the urgency fracturing through her fear. "Mommy, come play," it taunted. The innocence of the words twisted into something vile. It took a shuffling step towards her, the sound wet and squelching as if it were treading through something thick and putrid. She backed up fast, her thoughts racing. Should she fight? Should she scream for help? She was utterly alone. The world outside was nothing but a blanket of snow, leaving her marooned in this nightmarish terrain. Then, a flicker of movement caught her eye. There. It was against the far wall, the source of the whispers now pulsating, swirling like smoke rising from an unseen fire. Almost hypnotically, she turned her head toward it, fixating on the mass that undulated and coiled. "Mommy," the voice called again, now coming from that thickening shadow, pulling her towards it as if her feet were glued to the floor. Each word dripped with a chilling sweetness, disarming her instincts to run. "No, you're not my son," Mia screamed. The words burst forth in a desperate plea. In her heart, she knew that she must run, but her legs felt heavy, weighed down by dread. Then, the shadow surged forward, dissolving the last remnants of doubt. In a single, fluid motion, it lunged at her, a horrifying amalgamation of twisted limbs, and that smiling face now painted floral with layers of darkness. Mia stumbled, falling back against the wall, blinking wildly to clear her vision. The laughter crescendoed, mixing with the storm outside as the darkness closed in. Suddenly, piercing through the cacophony, a loud bang came from above, reverberating down the staircase like a gunshot. Mia jerked, her breath suspended, as a new, unmistakable fear gripped her. What if something far worse lurked above? With one last glance into the depths of shadows, she summoned her resolve and bolted toward the door. She had to escape before whatever was beyond the shadows claimed her entirely. Was it her mind unraveling? Or was there truly something waiting for her upstairs? The moment of truth was about to unfold. Mia rushed for the door, her heart pounding in her chest as adrenaline coursed through her veins. She could feel the shadows slithering behind her, eager to claim their prize. Each frantic step felt like quicksand, dragging her back into a nightmare. "Get away from me," she shouted into the darkness, but the laughter only grew louder, a cacophony echoing through the empty halls. Her hand trembled as she fumbled with the doorknob, desperate to escape the claustrophobic nightmare of her home. But it wouldn't budge. She turned, heart sinking as she glanced back at the hall, engulfed in darkness. The shape was growing, rearing up as if stretching into something even more horrific. It swirled like ink in water, feeding off her fear, feeding off her desperation. Ben! It was a roar now, a guttural plea. What was wrong with her? She forced herself to look. The eyes glimmering back at her were not those of her son. The void had consumed them, leaving behind only malevolence. Her mind screamed at her to run, to do anything. But the fear, that debilitating fear, clung to her like ice in her veins. Suddenly, a louder noise erupted from the room above, a crash followed by the sound of splintering wood, shattering any remaining hope. What could be up there? The thought sent a shiver cascading down her spine. Was it another thing in her home that should not exist? With trembling fingers, she grabbed a nearby chair and threw it against the door, hoping to force it open. The splintering noise resonated in her ears, mingling with the frantic laughter now morphing into something distinctly mocking. Mia's reality twisted again. "Mommy, don't leave," came a voice that sounded eerily polite, almost playful. It was Ben. It was not Ben, an echo of innocence layered under malevolence. "Shut up," she screamed. She couldn't let false familiarity take her any longer. Mia felt the walls closing in. She couldn't let Ben's name be a weapon against her. With one last desperate shove against the door, it creaked open, spilling cold air into the room. She stepped into the unknown, the storm outside howling as she stumbled onto the staircase. Upward she went, each step echoing with a thud against the haunting silence behind her. The staircase spiraled like a dark tunnel, fading light revealing only glimpses of creaking shadows. "What are you hiding?" Mia muttered under her breath, her own echo teasing her. She never made it to the upper floor alone. Was it fear of what she might find, or the sinister allure of what might be lurking there? Her breath quickened, tightening in her throat. A shiver flared up her spine, the icy tendrils wrapping around her. Just then, an unearthly wail cut through the air, reverberating down the hallway. It was heart-wrenching, anguishing. Mia pressed on, desperately willing herself to keep moving despite the dread threatening to pull her back. "Ben?" she called out softly, her voice trembling, almost breaking. "Answer me." Another crash sounded from within a room near the hallway's end, the door slamming open, revealing a flicker of movement behind it. A flash of white, a child's figure darted through the dark. "Ben!" she shrieked, lunging forward, pulse hammering in her ears. But as she reached the threshold, the door abruptly slammed shut, reverberating mockingly. The laughter returned, spiraling into a chorus of sinister cackles. Mia felt the walls around her shake as she knocked on the door. "Let me in, please." The laughter faded, replaced by another sound, something dragging, something scraping. It was ominous and smooth, like nails against wood, coming closer. Was it the children's song? The shadows loomed dense and heavy as she staggered back, the weight of the world pressing against her mind. Something was coming. Something had been waiting for her. Suddenly, the door flung open, and Mia was thrust into silence. What stood before her felt like death itself. "Welcome home, Mommy." What lay in the room? What awaited Mia when she crossed that threshold? Mia's heart dropped as the pale figure stepped into view. It was small, wrinkled, and cloaked in tatters, casting a haunting silhouette against the dim light. The face, if one could even call it that, was obscured by shadow, but she could feel its gaze, lurking just beyond her vision. It wasn't Ben. It was a creature born of nightmares, with a sinister, inviting voice echoing in her mind. "Come in, Mommy," it crooned, the words dripping with a sickly sweetness that turned her stomach. Each syllable wound around her thoughts, pulling her closer to the beast before her. A flicker of something monstrous flicked in and out of the shadows, taunting her. Mia hesitated, realizing the air grew thick with a suffocating dread. The temperature dropped, and she could see her breath, the mist curling in front of her like some lost soul trying to escape. She gritted her teeth, fighting against the tension constricting her chest. "No, this isn't real," she shouted, her voice cracking. She lashed out instinctively, stumbling back toward the hallway. Yet the laughter bore down on her, urging her forward as if the darkness itself wielded a grip of iron. Something shifted in the darkness, a whisper that tickled the back of her neck. Ben needs you, don't you want to see him? A gut-wrenching pain twisted in her heart. She wanted nothing more than to hold her son, to feel him safe in her arms. But this creature, this mockery of her child, filled her with disgust. Stay away from me, she yelled, her voice trembling with conviction. Still, the shadows seemed to close in tighter, whispering promises only they could understand. They slid along the walls, undulating like snakes, and the sense of despair washed over her like a torrential wave. The room behind her stretched like a cavern, dark and waiting. I know you're in there, Ben, Mia called, feigning confidence, desperate for a response. The silence that followed was oppressive, thick like fog, swallowing her words whole. Mia, a faint voice, thin like broken glass, drifted from within the dark room. Her heart leapt as she heard it again, his voice, sweet yet laced with an edge of dread. Mommy, come to me. It felt like a hook embedded in her heart, a true siren call that filled her with equal measures of hope and horror. Unsure of what lay beyond that threshold, she took a shaky step forward, feeling the weight of the cold air swirling around her. No, Ben, she shouted again, spurred by the anguish in her heart. I'm coming. But the sudden chill intensified, cracking across her skin. The shadows shifted, reforming into distorted shapes that danced across the walls, whispering curses and taunts. Shaking, she pushed through the threshold, grip tightening on the doorframe. The room was impossibly vast, filled with remnants of a life she recognized but distorted under a veil of darkness. It was wrong, a cruel joke her mind embroidered into her memories. A glimmer caught her eye, and she turned just in time to catch a glimpse of another pale figure darting behind a corner. A laugh, high-pitched and childlike, echoed against the desolation. It wasn't T alone. A frenzied blur of pale bodies slithered in the corners, eyes watching her intently. Mommy, they chorused in unison, the chant weaving through the air, thickening the tension like smoke. Fear clawed at her throat as she realized the room was alive with them, creatures molding and reshaping memories. They reached for her, their fingers elongated and wretched, brushing through her mind. Ben. But the space shrank, walls closing like a vice. A menacing grin spreading across the leading figure's face, a grotesque parable of innocence lost. The shadows around her thickened, rising like a storm, obscuring the way out. She couldn't breathe. She was trapped in a kaleidoscope of deception, spinning faster and faster, trapped not just in her house but in her own mind. Was it too late to find her son? Mia clutched her head, panic washing over her. She had to escape the web of darkness that threatened to consume her. But just as she turned to flee, something cold and clammy wrapped around her wrist, holding her in place. Stay with us, Mommy, forever. What would she do? Would she succumb to the twisted cries of her lost child? Or would she fight against the terrifying grip of the shadows? As she struggled, the room seemed to pulse around her, breathing life into the horrors waiting just beyond reach. Mommy, could she outsmart the nightmare? Or was it destined to claim her soul? Mia's breath came in shallow gasps. Panic raced through her veins, igniting every nerve, ending into a frenzy. The grip on her wrist felt like ice, squeezing tighter with every frantic heartbeat. She turned her head, desperate to see the face of whatever was holding her captive. But the shadows distorted her view, twisting into a gaunt mask of terror that made her stomach churn. Let me go, she screamed, voice echoing in the cavernous space, drowning beneath the symphony of laughter that rippled through the air. Each giggle crawled along her skin, a reminder of innocence turned sinister. The creature tightened its grip, and she could feel its unnaturally warm breath against her ear, a sickly whisper creeping into her mind. Why do you fight, Mommy? We're family now. Fighting against the panic clawing at her throat. She yanked her wrist free, forcing herself to turn away from the figure. Ben, I'm looking for you, she cried out, the words wrapping around her as she dashed deeper into the room, hoping for a glimmer of her son amidst the chaos. But with every step she took, the shadows flickered and danced to their own sinister rhythm, mocking her attempts at rescue. The walls pressed closer, stifling her breath as she stumbled forward, arms raised high to ward off the taunting hands reaching from the darkness. "Mommy? You'll find us. Just reach out." They blended into the echoes. A cacophony of chilling whispers wrapped around her, circling her mind like vultures. Memories surged and crashed like tidal waves. Laughing at a birthday party, his small hands gripping a colorful cake, pushing him on a swing, the sun shining down, illuminating his joyous smiles. The contrast of those moments pressed down on her heart, a painful juxtaposition against the horror before her. Could these shadows really be memories attempting to lure her in? Or were they twisted figments born out of the abyss? She shook her head, willing it all away. "No, leave me alone." Suddenly, an image bloomed in her mind, Ben's terrified face, trapped somewhere close. That jolt of clarity propelled her legs forward, urging her to sprint into the depths of the room. She had to keep moving. She had to find him. But then a figure appeared before her, blocking her path. She skidded to a stop, heart pounding hard against her chest. It was another pale shadow, but this one was different, a reflection of innocence and suffering, eyes wide with fear. "Mommy, help me," it wailed, voice echoing with desperation as it pointed to the corner of the room, where the darkness thickened. "No, that's not my Ben," Mia shouted back, her mind racing. "You're just like the others." The figure shattered into laughter, a high-pitched sound that crackled the air like glass breaking. "All the same, Mommy, all your children belong to us now." Laughter echoed throughout the room, layering itself over her fear, pressing against her mind until she couldn't think anymore. The shadows surged forward, and claws long and warped swiped at her, grazing her arm and sending bursts of ice through her veins. She stumbled backward, collapsing against the wall, breathing heavily as darkness threatened to engulf her. Just then, a soft light flickered in the far corner, cutting through the gloom like a beacon. Mia squinted, hope igniting within her. Maybe, just maybe, that glimmer was a way out, a way to her son. "Ben," she called again, this time with a hint of hope, pushing herself up with renewed vigor. As she edged toward the light, the shadows recoiled, hissing, "You can't leave, he belongs to us." "Shut up," she shouted. "I will not let you take him from me." The creatures shrieked, their sounds twisting violently in the air. The luminance grew stronger, bathing her in warmth, but the pressure from the shadows flexed against her, trying to pull her back into the depths. "Come to us, Mia. Your son yearns just as much as we do." Mia shook her head desperately, reaching the edge of the light. The space shimmered, promising safety. Could she make it? Would she have to face an even darker truth waiting within? Just as she stepped forward, a strong hand shot out from the darkness, grasping her ankle. She tumbled, heart racing, as screams filled her ears. The last thing she heard was the whispered promise, echoing like a death knell as reality began to blur. Stay with us forever. Would she succumb to the horrifying pull of shadows, or could she find the strength to break free? The darkness swirled, ready to swallow her whole once more. Mia's heart hammered against her ribs as she fell backward, darkness swallowing her whole. The shadows closed in around her. For a moment, the world spun in a whirlpool of black and gray, disorienting her. Then a tight grip on her ankle released, and she hit the ground hard. Her breath escaped in a rush, a gasp that caught in her throat as she scrabbled to get up. The light flickered further away, taunting her. It pulsed like a heartbeat, seemingly out of reach, and she could hear the shadows whispering her name again. "Mia? Come back. Join us." With every breath, fear coiled tighter in her chest. Shadows writhed around her, fingers tugging insistently, dragging her laughter higher and higher. Each giggle echoed like a cruel melody, promising a fate that made her skin crawl. But she refused to give in, not yet. She squeezed her eyes shut, focusing on her son's face, that shining light amidst the clarity of chaos. "Breathe, Mia," she whispered to herself, trembling. "Just breathe." The darkness seemed to respond, shadows surging closer, suffocating her. Desperation fueled her. She pushed herself up, gripping the wall. The surface was cold and sticky, as though it absorbed the terror surrounding her. She cast a glance behind, and the oncoming shadows recoiled, hissing. Vile creatures, she spat, determination flooding her veins. You won't have me. As if in retaliation, the shadows lunged forward, merging into one ghastly form, grotesque and surreal in its malice. It shifted into a monstrous amalgam of faces, each one twisted into an expression of despair, mouths forever screaming in silence. The grotesque entity reached a clawed hand toward her, and instinct kicked in. Mia sprinted toward the flickering light, feet pounding the ground as adrenaline surged. No! A chorus of voices screamed, harmonizing with the shadows. You will stay. Mia felt a tug at her heart, as if the darkness itself was trying to anchor her, but she fought against the invisible chains pulling her back. With one last surge, she launched herself toward the light, teeth gritted, mind set. She could almost feel Ben's warmth, his small arms wrapping around her. A sanctuary amidst chaos. But the moment her fingers grazed the light's edge, it flickered violently, and a deafening crack of thunder erupted in the room. The shadows erupted into anger, surging furiously toward her, voices rising to a chilling crescendo. Forever, forever, forever. The light dimmed suddenly as Mia felt herself being shoved backward. The magnetic pull from the shadows was relentless, dragging her close to the brink of a void that resembled the bowels of a living nightmare. She screamed, and solidarity crashed over her, echoing into the dark void. The world spun as she barely held on to consciousness. Ben! She screamed again, but no answer came. No cries, no laughter, just swirling shadows closing in around her. Then she saw him, a flicker of her son, hardly more than a shadow himself, trapped somewhere deep within the dark enclosure. His small hand reached out, desperate and pleading, but the darkness laughed, wrapping around him like a shroud. Join us. Mommy, join us. Mia felt the last vestiges of her strength eroding as she clawed at the darkness. The cacophony of laughter filled her head, drowning her thoughts. In that moment, a horrifying clarity hit her. Was Ben even in here? Or was he lost to the darkness forever? Chaos exploded, shadows shrieking, a tempest encircling her. Eyes wide, heart racing, she made one last desperate attempt to break free. Then a flash of light. Suddenly, the space erupted in blinding brightness, engulfing the shadows and their dreadful whispers. But amidst the blaze, something else shimmered, a horrific truth that chilled her to the bone. What had she left behind in the darkness? When the light dimmed, she felt a whisper against her ear, soft yet chilling. It's not over, Mommy. Mia shuddered, flipping her gaze around at the now slightly illuminated room, a corridor lined with doors, each one emblazoned with a terrible memory. Something sinister waited beyond. Would she find Ben, or would she lose herself entirely? The echo of laughter taunted her, wrapping its fingers around her will. Let us have some fun, shall we? Mia's eyes darted along the corridor, the air heavy with malevolence. The doors loomed like dark sentinels, each one whispering secrets that scratched at the edge of her sanity. She could feel the shadows linger just behind her, waiting, watching, eager for her to falter. Which one? She murmured to herself, a trembling hand reaching toward a door that stood slightly ajar. The wood was aged, pitted, as if it had been gnawed on by unseen teeth. A faint pulse of light flickered from within, drawing her forward, a moth to a flame. Just as she was about to embrace the curious glow, a voice slithered from the darkness. You can't trust the light, Mia. It lies. The voice twisted around her, wrapping its icy fingers around her throat. The laughter returned, cruel and mocking. No, she shouted, shaking her head aggressively, trying to scatter the voices like leaves caught in a storm. Get away from me. She backed away, heart racing. The walls closed in, and she felt panic rise like bile in her throat. Forcing herself to breathe, she turned her eyes to the other doors, searching for a sign of hope. Each one bore a different expression, some rage, some despair. As she stepped towards the nearest door, it creaked open on its own, revealing a pitch-dark interior. The smell of decay and despair wafted out, choking her. She hesitated, sweat trickling down her back. Is this where you are, "Ben?" she called, her voice trembling. Moments passed in silence. Then, a low, unearthly moan rolled from the darkness, making her blood run cold. "Mommy," the sound was soft, innocent, yet it dripped with an unsettling undertone. "Ben." Her voice cracked, desperation clawing at her insides. Another door swung open, this time showing a hazy image of a boy, her boy. "Come play with me." "Mommy," it was Ben, gathered in shadows, parts of him flickering like a faulty light bulb. His smile was wide but unnatural. Something about it sent a shiver down Mia's spine. "No, this isn't real," she shouted, stumbling back. She could feel the dread settling in, thick and suffocating. The shadows surged forward, engulfing her in darkness once again. "Play with us," they whispered, seductive taunts wrapping around her mind. "We just want to have fun." A surge of fury ignited within her. "I am your mother. I will save him." Her defiance rang out in the void, a claim against the malevolent forces that sought to claim her. Clenching her fists, she sprinted down the corridor, doors slamming behind her as she passed, their echoes crashing against her resolve. She was losing time. How long had she been here? The laughter crescendoed into a cacophony, drowning her thoughts. She forced herself to focus on Ben and that flicker of light, just a simple light. She needed to find it again. In her panic, she spotted a glimmer at the end of the corridor. A door stood there, bathed in a soft, inviting glow. Hope surged within her. As she sprinted toward it, she felt a presence at her back, claws grazing her neck. "You'll regret this, Mommy," the shadows hissed, venom dripping from every word. "Get off me," she screamed, but the cold finger dug deeper, and she was almost brought to her knees. More doors began to creak open, revealing glimpses of horrors that flickered past like old film reels, images of despair, lost hopes, and broken dreams. They beckoned her to stay, to join them in their torment. Mia's pulse quickened, desperation giving her strength. She shot toward the illuminated door, the shadows retreating, shrieking in outrage. But the love of a mother was strong, and as she reached for the handle, she felt a twist of hope. "Just a little further, Ben," she whispered, praying she could reach him in time. She opened the door, and the light was blinding. Suddenly, her world tilted as she was pulled through, and the laughter faded to a haunting echo behind her. A new voice whispered in the brightness, distorted yet familiar. "You thought you could escape us, Mia?" Heart pounding, she dove into the unknown, determined to confront what lurked on the other side. In that moment, she knew one truth: her fight was far from over, and the shadows were still hungry. What awaited her next? What dark memory would she face? Light enveloped Mia, but it wasn't warm. It felt cold, sterile, like a fluorescent bulb in a hospital. She stumbled, her feet unsure against the unyielding floor. As her eyes adjusted, she realized she was in a room, stark white and void of color. But it was the familiar sight of hospital beds that sent a rush of dread coursing through her. Ghostly silhouettes of nurses moved silently like wraiths, their faces hidden behind shadowy masks. The atmosphere crackled with an oppressive tension, and Mia's pulse raced faster. "Ben?" she called, her voice a fragile whisper lost in the sterile air. One of the nurses turned her head. For a brief moment, Mia caught a glimpse of despair etched in her eyes before she faded back into the shadows. Mia's heart sank. This wasn't right. The hospital had once held her child, and now it felt like a graveyard of memories. "Where are you?" The words clawed at her throat, sounding more like a plea than a question. She took a reluctant step forward, drawn by the echo of her son's laughter that seemed to float in the air. It was sweet and innocent, yet it twisted her stomach like poison. As she moved deeper into the room, she found another bed, the sheets stained brown and crispy. Resting on the pillows was a toy, a tattered teddy bear with one eye missing, its stitching unraveling. The familiar shape rocked her, nudging loose dark memories. "Ben loved that bear," she whispered, choking back nausea. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the room shifted. The walls contorted, stretching endlessly as grotesque faces emerged in the plaster. They twisted in anguish, mouths opening in silent screams. Paralyzing chill gripped her. The laughter grew louder, morphing into a chorus of giggles, echoing, teasing. "Play with us. Join us," they sang, a haunting melody laced with malice and longing. "No," Mia screamed, clamping her hands over her ears. She turned, desperate to escape the taunts, when a door at the far end of the room burst open. "Mommy!" It was Ben's voice, clearer than before, pulling her in like a tide. She sprinted through the thickening shadows, the cries behind her morphing into wails of rage. "Come back!" they shrieked, their voices like jagged glass against her mind. Every step felt heavy, as if chains bound her feet to the floor. The walls seemed to close in, warped and alive, reaching for her with ghostly hands. They clawed at her skin, leaving her breathless, skin crawling with panic. Ben. She could see him now, a blur of smallness at the end of the room, hovering in a hollow, flickering light. He looked so real, so close, yet just out of reach. Crawling through the last expanse of darkness, she flung herself at him, arms wide. But as her fingers brushed against his shoulder, he vanished like smoke, replaced by a mirror. In it, she saw a twisted reflection, her face distorted, eyes hollow, pleading for deliverance. The voice returned, softer now but no less insidious. "You can't save him, Mia. He belongs with us." A guttural scream tore from her lips. She slammed her palms against the glass, the cold surface sending shards of ice racing through her veins. "No, I will save him." Just then, the mirror shattered, splinters raining down like stars, and the ground trembled beneath her. With each fragment that fell, memories surged forth, flashes of laughter, warmth, and love, overlaid with images of torment and shadows. Mia felt herself slipping, the pieces of her sanity crumbling apart with every sound that filled the air. "Don't leave me," she cried out, but the darkness began to pull her down, wraiths emerging to drag her into the abyss. In a final desperate attempt, she shouted, "I choose him. I'll take him back." The shadows paused, hesitation in their grasp. But would the darkness let her go? As she teetered on the edge of oblivion, uncertainty clawed deep within her. Would her choice cost everything? And the shadows hissed their response, swirling closer, hungry for her decision. What sacrifice would she have to make to escape? What price for her son's return? Mia stood at the precipice of dread, adrenaline surging through her veins like wildfire. The shadows writhed, hungry, almost sentient, their whispers curling around her mind like vine tendrils. From deep within, the echoes of her love for Ben surged, a lighthouse fighting against the storm, pulling her back to sanity. "I choose him," she yelled, seizing the moment. "I will fight. You are not stronger than a mother's love." The shadows recoiled as though struck, their cacophony of laughter faltering. As Mia pressed forward, she felt the icy hands of darkness grip her ankles, dragging her toward the yawning void. But she would not succumb. With every ounce of her being, she pushed back against the haunting memories, each precious second motivating her to resist. "Ben," she cried again, forcing the name out as if it were the key to unlock all horror. "I'm coming for you, no matter what." The shadows shrieked in anger, the whispers clawing at her, demanding her surrender. "He's one of us," they hissed. "You can never bring him back." Moments felt like lifetimes. Mia's mind flooded with fragment snippets of bedtime stories, moments of play, and warm hugs. Each image anchored her, burning brighter than the encroaching darkness. "I refuse to believe that." The declaration erupted from her chest, vibrating through the oppressive air, a battle cry forged in despair. With a rush of raw strength, she tore herself free from the grasping shadows. She lunged through the shimmering shards of memories around her, forcing herself to stay focused on the flickering light ahead. Those screams from the shadows echoed in her ears, but Mia submerged them beneath the promise she whispered. "You belong with me, Ben." Finally, she sprang toward the glow, arms outstretched as waves of shadow surged and crashed around her. The sanctum of light pulsated reliably, a welcoming embrace as she dove into its comforting warmth. The storm of darkness huffed furiously behind her, but Mia refused to look back. Time and space twisted, the very fabric of her reality churning around her. Just as the icy tendrils threatened to pull her back, she crashed through the light with an unyielding crash. She landed on solid ground, breathless. The air was crisp, filled with sounds more potent than the scattered whispers. She blinked against the brightness, heart pounding, and felt the gentle warmth of sunlight on her skin. And there he stood, Ben. He was small, his face lit by a confused smile, innocence shimmering in his eyes as though the shadows had never darkened their door. "Mommy?" he said. Confusion etched across his brow like a beautiful puzzle. Mia's heart exploded with relief as if she were reborn in that moment. She dashed forward, scooping him into her arms, soaking in the beautiful warmth of his body. "Ben, I found you. I thought I lost you. I was scared." "Mommy," he whispered, wrapping his small arms around her tightly. I know, she choked, tears brimming in her eyes. "But you're safe now. We're going to be okay." As she held him close, a dark shadow tried to reach through the radiant light surrounding them. A clap of rage echoed from deep within the darkness's clutches. But this time, it was impotent, fading further as Mia tightened her hold on Ben, grounding herself in the love she fought for. Suddenly, the grip of shadows unraveled, groans of fury piercing the wall between them. The howling faded, replaced by silence. The world around them shifted softly, the cold grip of shadows dissolving until nothing remained but warmth, enveloping them entirely. Mia glanced down at Ben, heart full. "Let us go home," she whispered, turning away from the echoing horror behind her. Hand in hand, they walked forward step by step, and each movement felt lighter, farther from the choking dread. The shadows lost their power, swallowed by the light, and every heavy moment they left behind clung to the past that could no longer hold them. As they continued forward, a feeling of safety washed over them, fueled by love and resilience. One glance over her shoulder confirmed her belief. The shadows, restless, screamed in despair, fading into oblivion as hope rekindled inside. "Mama, can we bake pie?" Mia laughed, the sound bubbling over like fizzy soda. "Absolutely, my love. But first, a hot chocolate? To celebrate our victory?" "Yay!" And together, they stepped into the light, passing through the threshold of shadows, leaving behind remnants of an old life, walking into a new one. Do you want more thrilling stories like this? You need to subscribe now so you don't miss out. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments with your thoughts and theories about what you just read. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need this thrilling conclusion in their lives.